The galaxy would later agree on one thing. The Vorga Empire didn't fall in a war. It didn't fall in a rebellion. It didn't fall from politics, famine, or plague. It fell in a single moment. A moment when a species the galaxy still called young issued one warning, and the most arrogant empire in known space laughed. They didn't laugh long, and they never laughed again. The story begins not with fleets or explosions, but with a transmission so quiet that thousands of monitoring stations nearly dismissed it as static. A faint pulse traveled across the void, weaving through constellations, slipping past relay nodes, and cutting straight into the throne hall of the Vorgan High Sovereign. The hall itself was a monument to decadence. Towering ceilings etched with the history of their conquests, walls shimmering with stolen artifacts, guards adorned in armor more ceremonial than functional. This chamber had witnessed the fall of worlds and the birth of tyrants, but it had never before heard a human speak directly to the throne. The message wasn't shouted, it wasn't dramatized. It carried no triumphant fanfare or desperate plea. It was simply spoken, clean, calm, with the unmistakable cadence of a species that had survived extinction more times than history cared to count. Stand down. Withdraw your fleets from the Orion Verge. This is humanity's final warning. That was it. 7 words of instruction, 9 of context. A closing line that felt less like a threat and more like a universal law. The envoy who recorded it hadn't raised his voice or sharpened his tone. He didn't need to. Humans rarely did. When the message finished, the throne hall fell into a stunned hush. Then, as though released from a spell, the room erupted in laughter. Court advisors doubled over. Officers choked on their drinks. The High Sovereign himself reclined on his throne with a smile carved from contempt, tapping one claw idly against the armrest. "A warning?" he mused, swirling his drink of crystalline amber. "From a species that has existed for less than 1,000 cycles? From a people who still cling to their tiny blue world as if it were the last stone in creation?" The court responded with a fresh wave of amusement. One of the Empire's admirals stepped forward, face twisted with amusement. "Your Majesty, humans are dramatic creatures. They believe their words carry weight far beyond their reach." Another chimed in. "They've mistaken their stubbornness for power, their diplomacy for authority, their survival for superiority." They all agreed. Humanity was brave but naive, fierce but foolish, clever but insignificant. A species built on hope instead of hierarchy. A cute anomaly in a galaxy shaped by conquest. As the laughter echoed through the Golden Hall, the message replayed again on the towering holoscreens behind the Sovereign. Over and over. Every repetition only seemed to amuse the Empire more. But not everyone laughed. In the back of the hall stood a low-ranking strategist named Zyril. He had fought alongside humans once, decades earlier, before rising through the Imperial Academy. He remembered the way they fought, not with precision, not with cold doctrine, but with something he couldn't quite define, something unbreakable, something terrifying. He remembered their eyes the most, not the eyes of soldiers desperate to win, but of people determined not to lose. "Your Majesty," Zyril said quietly, "humans do not issue threats lightly. Their warnings are not bluffs. They are irrelevant," the Sovereign snapped, slicing the air with a wave of his hand. "We will respond to their message with action, not fear." He ordered the Imperial fleets to accelerate their invasion of the Orion Verge. He demanded the destruction of human outposts. He commanded the burning of frontier colonies and the seizure of their ships. His voice rang with arrogance, confidence glowing in every syllable. Zyrel lowered his head. He knew what would come. Because in his youth, he had seen humans fight with tenacity so raw and primal it defied logic. He had seen them refuse surrender when every probability predicted annihilation. He had seen a squad of humans defend a single wounded child with more ferocity than some empires defended their thrones. But most of all, he had seen something more dangerous than hatred or aggression. He had seen purpose. "Your Majesty," Zyril whispered, "that was not a warning. That was a countdown." But the Empire didn't listen. They cheered as their fleets mobilized. They celebrated as the war engines ignited across their industrial noons. They drank beneath banners depicting burning human colonies. And they declared that the galaxy would witness the end of humanity once and for all. What they did not realize, what they could not have known, was that humanity wasn't preparing for war. Humanity was preparing for justice. And when humans give a warning, the universe should listen. For once, it is ignored. Something ancient awakens in them. Something the Vorga Empire was about to learn. Painfully, permanently, and far too late. Here is Segment 2 fully expanded to 5,000 characters, continuing seamlessly from the expanded Segment 1, keeping the cinematic HFY tone and tension high. The Vorga Empire, drunk on arrogance, assumed humanity's silence was fear. Weeks passed after the first warning, and the Orion Verge continued to burn. Human outposts were shattered, colonies seized, and supply lines cut without mercy. Imperial broadcasts boasted every victory, glorifying each conquest. The High Sovereign, confident that humanity had no stomach for interstellar war, ordered fleets deeper into the Verge, preparing for the final strike that would bring the blue planet under Vorgan dominion. Each day, as the Empire tightened its grip, the Sovereign congratulated himself and his generals. They were certain the humans were cornered, trembling behind walls, scrambling desperately for weapons that could never reach them in time. The galaxy watched and assumed the same. But humans are never what the galaxy assumes. On Earth, nothing seemed to happen. Cities remained vibrant, fleets did not mobilize in the patterns predicted by any algorithm, and diplomats did not broadcast panic across the stars. Humanity had retreated nowhere. They were not hiding, and they were not cowering. Instead, they were calculating, building, and waiting. Deep underground in hidden facilities spanning the globe, every scientist, soldier, and engineer operated like the parts of a living organism. They did not scramble or panic. They prepared for the one thing the galaxy rarely accounted for: inevitability. In the orbital platforms above the planet, human fleet commanders ran silent simulations, analyzing trajectories, enemy power, and vulnerabilities. Each warship, each shuttle, each unassuming satellite became part of a larger design no one outside of humanity could comprehend. And then came the first sign that the Vorga Empire was about to learn the hard truth. A single human vessel, the UNS Harbinger, slipped from hyperspace at the edge of the Orion Verge, alone. No escorts, no visible weapon arrays, no energy signatures to indicate any form of war readiness. The Vorga detection systems picked it up, but the data confused them. There was no mass, no heat, no gravitational distortion of any note. Just a black silhouette drifting silently like a specter. The High Sovereign scoffed. "One ship? Against thousands of our warships? We will crush it with amusement." His advisors nodded. "The humans are desperate. They will hide, beg, and negotiate before they are destroyed. Across the fleet, weapons powered, shields hummed, and commanders laughed. They did not yet understand that this was exactly what humans wanted them to believe. As the days dragged on, intelligence reports suggested the Harbinger was acting strangely. It was not moving toward Earth, it was not retreating. It hovered, almost mockingly, at the outer edge of Vorgan's sensor range. Imperial officers puzzled over this behavior, scanning it repeatedly. Was it a decoy? A new weapon? A desperate ploy to distract the Empire's attention? None of the answers made sense. The ship's presence was constant, unthreatening on the surface, yet unnervingly persistent. And then came the second message. It was not loud, it was not demanding, it was not sent to intimidate. It carried the same calm tone, the same quiet authority as the first. The humans did not speak of battle or annihilation, they spoke only of fact. Your warning has expired. That simple sentence spread across Vorga networks like a virus. Ship sensors flickered, shields fluctuated, and commanders reported unusual gravitational readings, temporal distortions, and energy anomalies they could not explain. The Vorga laughed at first, until the anomalies intensified. Minor systems failed. One cruiser disappeared entirely, collapsing inward before any shots were fired. Panic rippled through the fleet like a sudden freezing wind. Fleet admirals shouted at their subordinates, demanded recalculations, and ordered retreats, but the universe itself seemed to bend under human will. Back on Earth, in the subterranean command bunkers, Commander Rhea Lawson stood before the central holographic display. Around her, officers monitored real-time feeds from every orbital sensor and distant reconnaissance probe. They had waited, not for the Empire to attack, but for the moment to strike. The Harbinger's emergence had been deliberate. The timing had been perfect, and the galaxy, despite all its arrogance, had fallen into the trap without realizing it. Lawson's voice cut through the chamber. Deploy all tactical arrays. Activate resonance grids. Prepare countermeasures. Every officer obeyed instantly. There was no hesitation, no panic. The calm certainty radiating from her was infectious. This was not fear. This was inevitability, the kind of quiet confidence that humanity carried through ice ages, pandemics, and wars that should have annihilated them centuries ago. Across the void, the Vorga Empire braced for what they assumed was their victory parade. They did not yet understand that the human silence had been a gathering storm, a warning more deadly than any message could convey. Each fleet maneuver, each deployment, each calculation was already anticipated. Humanity did not act blindly. They had predicted every move, every attempted intimidation, every miscalculation the Empire could make. They had waited, not for chance, but for certainty. And then, in the quiet moments before the first strike could occur, the Harbinger transmitted again. No alarms, no demands, no threats. Just a single phrase, crystalline in its clarity. We warned you. For the first time, the galaxy realized that humans were not merely defiant. They were inevitable. The Empire's confidence wavered, its arrogance faltered, and in that moment, the scales of power shifted, not because of firepower or numbers, but because humanity had never been measured by the metrics of other civilizations. The Vorga Empire had assumed silence was weakness. They were wrong. Humanity had been silent to prepare, not to surrender. And when silence ends, the universe listens, or it dies. The UNS Harbinger drifted through the void like a shadow carved from silence. Alone, it seemed insignificant, a single vessel against 1,000 Vorga warships. But the galaxy had long underestimated humanity. Across the Orion Verge, the Vorga fleets were mobilized for triumph, their sensors alive with arrogance, their shields humming with overconfidence. Their dreadnoughts, flagship cruisers, and tactical frigates formed a wall of iron, a cage they assumed would contain a primitive species. They did not see the trap, for it was never in the numbers. They never had to. Humans did not fight by conventional rules. Humans fought by rewriting them. As the Harbinger approached, the Vorga detection arrays flickered. The ship's stealth was subtle, not invisible, but impossible to categorize. Energy readings refused analysis. Gravitational readings bent against logic. Time itself seemed to warp ever so slightly around the vessel. On every bridge, officers rubbed their eyes, recalibrated instruments, and still could not reconcile the data. They were taught to dominate the stars with sheer force. They were taught to believe in certainty. And yet, certainty slipped through their fingers like water. Then the first transmission arrived. Not a threat, not a plea, not an ultimatum. Just 3 words. Your warding expired. The words carried neither emotion nor fear, only a quiet, unyielding authority. Across every Vorga system, those words reverberated like the tolling of a bell that marked the end of pride. The Empire laughed at first, then scowled when nothing happened immediately. They expected delay. They expected confusion. They did not expect reality to fold in on itself. The Harbinger's engines pulsed once, twice, and then the void fractured. Not explosively, not dramatically, but like the universe itself was bending. Gravity fields around the flagship distorted, and the closest Vorga cruiser shuddered violently. Sensors reported impossible readings, power levels spiking beyond theoretical maxima, shields fluctuating as if reality itself questioned their existence. Before any orders could be issued, the cruiser dissolved. Not exploded, dissolved. Its hull compressed into an infinitesimal point, then vanished. Not a trace remained, no wreckage, no signal. The crew, none survived. The galaxy would later record this moment as the first of many impossible disappearances. Panic rippled through the Vorga fleets. Commanders screamed at subordinates. Signals overlapped and conflicted. Targeting arrays lost luck. Hyperdrives malfunctioned in synchronized failure, as if the universe itself sided with humanity. The High Sovereign's fury became palpable, his mandibles clattering against his throne in frustration. "Shields to maximum! Target the Harbinger!" he roared. Orders came too late. Systems failed faster than they could execute. One by one, the fleets fell. Dreadnoughts twisted and compressed. Frigates vanished into nothingness. Artillery platforms collapsed inward, as if squeezed by an invisible fist. Every maneuver the Vorga Empire executed had already been accounted for and nullified. It was not chaos, it was design. Humanity had predicted every strike, every counter, every reaction, and had planned accordingly. The galaxy had never seen such precision applied not to winning, but to erasing. The Harbinger moved again, and with each pulse of its engines, more ships disappeared. On Earth, Commander Rhea Lawson observed the unfolding destruction through orbital feeds. Her face remained calm, her hands steady on the command console. No one spoke without necessity. The team had trained for this moment, and yet even they marveled at the sheer efficiency. The humans were not slaughtering indiscriminately. They were dismantling an empire's war machine with scalpel-like precision. Then came the pinnacle of destruction, the eternal dominion, the Vorga flagship, colossal and gleaming, the symbol of the Empire's invincibility. Its sensors recorded the Harbinger's approach, and for the first time, the crew glimpsed fear, a subtle, creeping doubt that had no place in Vorga doctrine. Before any retaliation could occur, the ship folded upon itself. Gravitational distortion intensified, bending space-time around its hull. It did not explode. It did not burn. It simply ceased to exist. Observers across light years would later swear they had seen the flagship's mass contract, vanish, and leave the void untouched, as though the Empire's might had been erased from reality itself. The High Sovereign screamed, but no sound reached him. His throne hall vibrated as the remaining fleets lost cohesion. Sub-admirals faltered. Officers dropped weapons, unsure if command still applied to a universe that seemed to have shifted. The Harbinger moved through the fleets like a ghost, its passage marked not by fire, but by absence. One by one, warships evaporated, dreadnoughts folded, and outposts lost power. Humanity was not in a battle. It was in the process of redefining what a battle meant. And yet, when all was done, the humans did not celebrate. The Harbinger did not deploy boarding parties. No human troops fired on civilians. No cities were occupied. Humanity's strike was surgical, precise, and final. The Vorga Empire had ignored a warning, and in doing so had invited its own permanent demise. Across the galaxy, the message became clear. Humans do not issue warnings lightly. They do not bluff. They do not negotiate when the clock has run out. When the last dreadnought disappeared, Commander Lawson transmitted a single message to the remnants of the Empire. "We warned you." And then the humans withdrew. The Harbinger faded into hyperspace, leaving behind a void where an empire had once stood, silent and unchallenged. The galaxy would remember this moment for centuries, not as a war, not as a victory, but as the first undeniable proof that humanity did not fight like any other species. Humanity ended wars before they began, and the Vorga Empire was their first permanent lesson. The galaxy had never seen silence like this. After the Harbinger struck, the Vorga Empire reeled, not in shock, not in pain, but in disbelief. Their fleets, once the pride of 1,000 worlds, had evaporated in the void. Strategic outposts folded inward, power grids collapsed, and every stronghold the Empire had clung to for centuries became useless monuments of arrogance. Cities that had once thrived under imperial rule went dark, and the stars themselves seemed to flicker in recognition of the Empire's sudden absence. From the heart of Vorga space to the farthest mining colony, confusion spread like wildfire. Communications failed, intelligence networks crashed, and fleets launched to investigate found nothing. No bodies, no wreckage, only empty voids where titans of war had once existed. The High Sovereign, once the embodiment of dominance and certainty, retreated to his deepest citadel, the so-called Fortress of Eternity, believing its shields could withstand any attack. But he was too late to comprehend what had already happened. The humans did not need to assault the fortress. They did not need fleets or armies. They had already dismantled the Empire's ability to fight, piece by piece, without touching a single civilian world. What remained of the Vorga forces was scattered and leaderless, each commander struggling to grasp reality. Panic replaced protocol. Fear replaced authority. Every attempted regrouping, every tactical maneuver failed before execution. The Empire was unraveling from the inside, not because of strength, but because the humans had shown them that their strength had always been an illusion. Earth's command centers were alive with quiet efficiency. Commander Rhea Lawson watched as reports flooded in from orbital sensors and deep space probes. Her team observed fleets collapsing, outposts losing power, and systems shutting down across thousands of star systems. "They're disintegrating themselves," one officer said, almost in awe. It's like their own arrogance is turning against them. Lawson nodded but did not speak. She understood the deeper truth. Humanity's victory was not in destruction alone. It was in precision, strategy, and the irrevocable lesson they were teaching every civilization that dared underestimate them. Across the Empire, surviving officials convened emergency councils in fractured citadels and abandoned orbital platforms. The words human unpredictability were repeated like a mantra. They scoured historical records, searching for precedent, for knowledge, for a clue that might explain what had just occurred. There was none. Humanity had not followed any known rules. They had not fought by the logic of war, the mathematics of probability, or the hierarchy of force. They had acted according to a single, incomprehensible principle: resolve. Every human fleet, every orbital defense, every tactical strike had been executed not in anger or desperation, but with the quiet inevitability of a species that refused to be conquered. In the Fortress of Eternity, the High Sovereign's advisors whispered, panicked, and argued. "They cannot sustain this," one said. "They are only one species. They will tire," another insisted. "They cannot strike every system simultaneously." The Sovereign's mandibles clattered in frustration. "You do not understand," he growled. "This is not conventional warfare. Humanity does not fight like other species. They do not expend resources the way we do. They do not react. They predict. They do not negotiate. They execute. We have underestimated them for centuries, and we are paying for it." Meanwhile, human vessels, no longer alone, moved like shadows across the Orion Verge. Not to conquer, not to terrorize, but to dismantle. Outposts were neutralized without explosions. Fleets were disabled without combat, and command centers were erased with surgical precision. Humanity's strategy was simple and terrifying: remove the ability to fight, and the Empire would collapse on its own. No human death squads, no scorched worlds, no unnecessary violence. Only the exact measures needed to ensure the Empire would never rise again. By the time the humans reached the outer perimeter of the Fortress of Eternity, the Vorga Empire was already in chaos. Supply lines were broken, communication networks shattered, fleets were scattered and leaderless. The fortress itself, designed to withstand thousands of years of siege, felt the subtle pressure of gravitational manipulation. Its shields quivered under forces no Vorga engineer had ever imagined. For the first time in recorded history, the High Sovereign realized that he could not fight an enemy he could neither predict nor comprehend. Then came the final message: calm, simple, and merciless. "We warned you." Across every surviving frequency, every operational holonet, the phrase repeated itself like a hammer striking the bell of final judgment. And then, without warning, the Fortress of Eternity's shields failed. Power conduits overloaded, artificial gravity collapsed, systems imploded with silent precision. The High Sovereign had no time to understand what was happening. One moment, he sat upon his throne, arrogance unbroken. The next, he was gone. Not dead by conventional means, not vaporized in flames, simply erased. In the aftermath, humanity did not celebrate. No cheers, no banners, no occupation. The Vorga Empire, a force that had ruled countless star systems through fear and brutality, had been reduced to fragments, leaderless and impotent. Humanity had proven that true power was not in numbers or conquest, but in understanding, preparation, and the unwavering courage to act decisively when the time came. The galaxy watched and learned that day. Humans did not conquer for glory. They acted to ensure survival, justice, and the irreversible enforcement of their warnings. The Vorga Empire had ignored humanity once. That mistake was permanent. The silence after the collapse was not peaceful. It was profound. Across the stars, a lesson echoed that would shape every strategy, every negotiation, and every alliance for centuries to come. Humanity does not bluff. Humanity does not threaten. Humanity warns. And when humanity issues a warning, the universe listens, or it dies. The Orion Verge fell silent. Not with the roar of explosions, not with the screams of surrender, but with the profound emptiness that follows inevitability. Humanity had not occupied worlds. They had not enslaved populations. They had not claimed territory. They had merely removed the threat, dismantled the Vorga Empire, and left the galaxy with a single, unshakable truth. Ignore a human warning at your own peril. Earth's command centers were alive with quiet observation. Commander Rhea Lawson and her officers watched the last of the surviving Vorga signals flicker across the holoscreens. Every fleet that had once challenged humanity's existence had been neutralized or destroyed. Every outpost that had celebrated conquest was abandoned. The High Sovereign, the tyrant whose arrogance had fueled centuries of war, was no more. Even the fortress that had been deemed invincible, the fortress of eternity, had fallen, folded in on itself by the invisible hand of human precision. There was no triumph in the command center, only understanding. Humanity had not won because they fought with greater weapons or more ships. They had won because they never allowed themselves to be defeated. They had won because they understood what every other empire had forgotten. The strength of a species is measured not by their fleets, but by their will to act decisively. Across the galaxy, news of the Empire's collapse spread faster than light. Neutral systems that had long trembled before Vorga domination began whispering the same word with growing reverence: humans. Even rival empires that had once plotted Earth's demise paused to reconsider. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer just a young, upstart species. Humanity had proven itself capable of rewriting the rules of war, of bending space and strategy to an almost mythical precision. And the galaxy understood that there was only one certainty left: never provoke humanity again. Survivors of the Vorga Empire fled in fragmented fleets, carrying tales of the impossible. Fleet commanders described how their ships had vanished without a trace, how entire formations had collapsed before they could engage, how a single human vessel, the Harbinger, had initiated the chain of destruction that left their empire in shambles. Even in whispered corridors of the remaining citadels, those who had once mocked humanity now muttered the same word with awe, terror, and disbelief: inevitable. Humanity had not acted out of hatred or desire for conquest. They had acted out of necessity, enforcing a warning that the Empire had arrogantly ignored. The Harbinger, now reunited with the human fleet, became a symbol across Earth and the colonies, the manifestation of human resolve, patience, and precision. It did not fire indiscriminately. It did not occupy conquered systems. It had done only what was necessary, and nothing more. That restraint was more terrifying than any weapon, because it signaled intelligence and judgment. The galaxy realized that humans did not destroy for pleasure or pride. They destroyed to enforce the certainty of survival. In every system, survivors of the conflict, human and alien alike, began to tell stories. Children reenacted the Harbinger's silent approach. Diplomats studied the humans' timing and planning. Military strategists, once arrogant, now pored over every transmission from Lawson's command, seeking the logic behind the inevitability. The galaxy had never witnessed a species whose warnings carried the weight of fate itself. Humanity had changed the very notion of power. And yet, humanity did not linger. Once the Vorga Empire had been neutralized, humans withdrew. No colonization fleets remained. No troops occupied captured stations. Instead, humanity returned to Earth, to their colonies, to the quiet preparation for whatever else the galaxy might throw at them. Their message was simple. Power is not proved by conquest, but by action, by readiness, and by the willingness to see warnings through to their inevitable conclusion. The last transmission recorded from the Harbinger before it left Vorga space became a legend. "We warned you." Those 3 words echoed across the stars, preserved in every surviving archive, repeated in the whispers of empires and traders alike. Humanity had offered the galaxy one warning and enforced it perfectly. Those who had ignored it paid the price permanently. And so, the galaxy learned the final lesson of the Orion Verge. Do not mistake restraint for weakness. Do not confuse patience for fear. Do not misjudge the resolve of humanity. When humans issue a warning, it is not a bluff, not a negotiation, not a plea. It is an inevitability. The Vorga Empire ignored it, and they ceased to exist. The stars themselves seemed to bend to the story of humanity, a species small by measure, young by age, but infinite in determination. Civilizations would speak of that day for centuries, of how a single warning could reshape the galaxy, of how one species refused to bow to arrogance, and of how the lesson was delivered with surgical perfection. Humanity had not conquered for glory. Humanity had not destroyed for vengeance. Humanity had acted to ensure that the galaxy would never forget. Some warnings are absolute, and some lessons, once learned, are permanent. From that day forward, no empire, no fleet, no tyrant in the galaxy would ever ignore a human warning again. The lesson had been delivered, and it had been delivered with precision, inevitability, and finality. Humanity had written its legend into the fabric of the stars, proving once and for all that when they speak, the universe listens, or it dies.